It's 9:05, so we'll go ahead and get started and we'll let people in as they join. Um, Welcome to our monthly coffee hour. Nigel Richardson from the Afrikana Film Festival is our speaker this month. And about CultureWorks, we are an independent 501c3 whose mission is to strengthen artists and arts and culture organizations to drive a greater impact in the community. We accomplish our mission through grant making, educational opportunities, and events throughout the region. We are currently gearing up for October VA, a month-long celebration of arts and culture every October. We will have October collateral available at our September 6th networking mixer hosted by the Branch Museum and at our September 15th benefit sponsored by Crossroads Art Gallery. I am Catherine Thompson, the Community Engagement Specialist for CultureWorks. Piper Lynch is our marketing specialist. If you have anything that you'd like featured in our newsletter, you can contact me. If you have anything that you'd like highlighted on our social media, or possibly you're an artist that would like to be spotlighted on our social media and our website, you can contact Piper. About Nigel. Nigel Richardson is a writer, filmmaker, and experienced curator based in Richmond, Virginia. He graduated from the University of Miami in 2017 with the Bachelor of Science in Communication and Motion Pictures. He then went on to join the Peace Corps, serving in Rwanda for 2 years, teaching English as a foreign language, and further pursuing his passion for education and working with youth and young adults. He currently works as program director for the Afrikana Independent Film Festival, which is Virginia's premier film festival dedicated to showcasing the cinematic works of people of color from around the world. Nigel has also worked for various other Black cultural arts organizations in the Richmond area, including Elegba Folklore Society and Browne Gallery, putting his passion for the arts into practice. The heart of Nigel's work is to use storytelling as a foundation to help craft experiences that elevate and celebrate diverse creators and their stories. During his presentation, we ask that you put your questions in the chat, and we'll leave it up to him whether he wants to answer it at the end of his presentation or during his presentation. Nigel, we hand it over to you.
All right, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and share screen and say good morning again to those just joined. Thank you, Catherine, for that introduction. My name is Nigel Richardson. I'm a writer, filmmaker, and experienced curator, born and raised right here in Richmond, Virginia. And in my professional role, I work as the program director for Afrikana Film Festival. I've been with Afrikana for 3 years now. I'm actually celebrating my work anniversary this month. And so I'm super excited to be able to share some of what I've learned during my time working with Afrikana. Before I begin, I do want to give a special shout out and thank you to CultureWorks for inviting me to speak today. And I don't see her on the call, but I still would like to give a shout out to Anjali Moon, the founder and creative director and executive director of Afrikana Film Festival. She is more than a boss. She's been a mentor, and she's taught me everything I know about this subject. And so I have to give a special thank you to her as well. So in today's presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about Afrikana, give you an introduction to who we are and what we do. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between event planning versus curating experiences, and then go into depth about 4 things that we keep in mind when we're curating experiences, which is using storytelling as the foundation. I'm going to talk about the importance of place in curation, using impactful experiential elements, and then finally creating space for entertainment, engagement, and empathy in our events. So Afrikana. Afrikana was founded in 2014 by Anjali Moon, and Afrikana actually holds the honor and distinction of being the only Black-owned and Black-focused film festival in the state of Virginia. So we're very proud of that. We're dedicated to using high-quality, well-crafted stories to elevate Black culture. And through Black creative expression, we are building a community rooted in lasting connections across the diaspora. So our flagship event is Afrikana Independent Film Festival, which is our multi-day festival that we hold every September. This year, we're celebrating 8 years. And so in the past 7 years, we've hosted over 10,000 film festival attendees. Over those 4 days of the festival, you can expect short and feature film screenings, workshops, discussions, dinners, after parties. It's a great time. It's a fun-filled, packed 4 days. Over the past 4 years, we've been thankful to have some amazing spotlight guests, including Amanda Seales, Talib Kweli, Ninth Wonder, Dapper Dan, Misa Hilton, Raymond Santana, just to name a few. Outside of our multi-day film festival, Afrikana Institute is our 501c3 organization, which is dedicated to furthering Afrikana's mission year-round. With that, we do events related to youth education. We also do corporate facilitation events in which we go into corporate spaces and use film as a conduit to start conversations about shifting the culture in corporate work environments. We also do filmmaker residencies. We just completed our inaugural script to screen filmmaker residency. That was completed as a part of our inaugural screenwriters competition that we did at last year's festival, which was open to BIPOC screenwriters from across the state of Virginia. We selected a winner, invited that winner to come to Richmond for a 60-day residency, and we actually produced their short film during that time. That short film is now in post-production and will premiere at our 8th annual festival in September. So it's a very beautiful life cycle, and we're creating a space within Afrikana that's not just a platform for people to screen films, but also for artists and filmmakers to come with their ideas and understand that Afrikana can hold those ideas and help to produce them and bring it to fruition. And then finally, we do internship opportunities for high school and college students throughout the year, all semesters. And right now, we actually have a wonderful intern who's getting an opportunity to help us prepare for our upcoming multi-day festival in September, which is a really unique opportunity working for a film festival, which is a space that a lot of film students don't even realize exists. And so getting that background opportunity is really exciting. We also do some year-round programs, including our Starry Night Cinema series. We actually have one coming up at the VMFA at the end of this month, so promo will be released for that very soon, as well as our Movies and Mimosas program. If you understand the concept of dinner in a movie, this is brunch in a movie. And so that is an exciting event that we've done over the years. And we have many, many, many more programming opportunities that we've done as well. So some highlights from our camera reel. So over the years, like I said, we brought some amazing guests. These are just a few that I want to touch upon. In 2017, we brought Angela Davis as a part of our Evening with an Icon series. And the year before, we brought Sonia Sanchez in 2016 as a part of our Evening with an Icon. Screened films allowed audiences to engage and ask questions and hear directly from those two legends within Black art and Black culture and cinema. In 2019, we brought Dapper Dan, Misa Hilton, April Walker, and a few others to our multi-day festival when we screened Hip Hop and Fashion, which was a documentary by Lisa Cortez. And that was a really exciting opportunity. As you can see by the crowd that's there with Dapper Dan, people thoroughly enjoyed that event. And it was for sure a highlight for us. This last face you may not recognize, but his name is BJ Dennis, and he is actually Afrikana's chef in residence. In 2021, we started doing an event called A Taste of Liberation Dinner, which is our outdoor dinner and a movie experience. And BJ is a Gullah Geechee chef out of South Carolina who we invited to come and prepare a meal. It was a very beautiful evening, and it has become one of Afrikana's most popular events. And so getting into the meat of the presentation, talking a little bit about the difference between event planning and curating experiences. So event planning is really, the basic definition is managing the creation and development of small and large scale events. It's about, maintaining a budget, having really tight logistics, scheduling things, having vendors, doing marketing and good promo. It's really somewhat methodical in the sense that you can have a checklist and make sure you go down that list and you produce a successful event for people to attend. It's about reserving tables and chairs and linens and making sure that things like that are together. And it's really about numbers in that way. Curating experiences takes event planning a little bit deeper and adds some depth to that. So it's about creating opportunities for people to connect organically. It's really about developing and strengthening relationships, creating space and holding space for conversation and in-depth dialogue between people, creating community among the attendees, and with that, creating an intimacy and kinship among people who continuously attend these events and create these experiences. And so with curation and curating experiences, what we try to focus on is creating memories and not moments. There are people within our Afrikana tribe who have continuously attended events, and they can think back to certain discussions and think about, oh, we had that wonderful discussion when this filmmaker came and screened their film, or this amazing after party that we had, or the amazing catering that we had at this specific event. And so we want people to enjoy the moment, but we also want it to create a lasting memory that they remember for years and years to come. It's about uniting people and empowering people within those spaces and within those experiences. And so if I had to narrow it down, I would say that event planning really operates from a headspace, whereas curating experiences is all about operating from a heart space. So getting into the 4 things that we keep in mind when curating experiences. The first is storytelling as the foundation. And so at the end of the day, Afrikana is a film festival. And so with that, we screen films all the time. Beyond, excellent cinematography and dramatic acting, film is really about excellent stories. And so when we look at creating an event around a film, we look at what is the story that the film is telling. What's the tempo and the vibe of that? Is it a lighthearted, fun comedy for people to enjoy and kind of laugh at? Or is it something that's a little bit more heavy and deep and weighty that really wants people to sit and reflect on their own lives and the lives of the people around them? We also think about the themes within the film. Is it about the Black family? Is it about love? Is it about exploration? Is it about growing up? And we think about those themes and think about how that ties into how we're going to frame this event. And we also just think about, at a base level, what are the reactions that we have looking at the film without needing to have a film studies degree? What is just the natural reaction to watching the film when you first see it? And based on those gut reactions and emotions, we can start to think about how we're going to develop an entire event and experience around that film. And then when we take it further, we think about what is the story that we're going to tell our guests based on that film. So we think about how we can frame discussion about the film afterward. You're probably going to hear me say this over and over and over again, but Afrikana does not screen films within a vacuum. We always create space for discussion through post-screening Q&A discussions, often with the director. But a lot of times we find ways to bring in community partners and other people who can enhance that discussion, whether they are as moderators or as panelists, to help to further the story that the film is telling and really drive home a specific message to the audience. So I'll give an example. At last year's opening reception, we premiered a film called Birth of a Planet that was produced by Tilt Productions. The film basically chronicled the life and the impact of Richmond trailblazer John Mitchell Jr. And his newspaper, the Richmond Planet. And after that screening at the Black History Museum, we not only had the director, Sly Tucker, but we also invited in people that we thought would enhance that discussion. Folks like Gary Flowers, who, if you're familiar with him, he is a Richmond historian and just someone who is extremely knowledgeable about Jackson Ward, about John Mitchell Jr., and the people who created that ecosystem in which John Mitchell Jr. Occupied. We invited people like Regina Boone from the Richmond Free Press, whose father started the Richmond Free Press. We invited Sly Tucker, the director, and then we also invited one of John Mitchell Jr.'s descendants. And so if that gives you an idea of how we invited certain people in to be able to offer certain entry points into the discussion. You have someone who is literally in Black publishing right now, Regina Boone. You have someone like John Mitchell Jr.'s descendant who can offer some specific context into his life. You have the director who can talk about the film, on that level, and you have a historian. And so when we think about it that way, we think about what is the story we're telling our guests based on this film, and using that storytelling as a foundation to craft an entire experience for all of our guests. The next thing we keep in mind is the importance of place. If you know Anjali Moon, you know that she reps Richmond hard. She is a proud Richmond native, and Richmond is an important part of Afrikana. We are very intentional about making sure that people understand that this film festival takes place in Richmond. We also try to make sure that we're highlighting Richmond's history and significance. We're highlighting the unique place that Richmond holds in the history of Virginia, the history of the American South, but also its connectivity to other places globally. And it's not lost on us that we are holding pretty much the only Black film festival in the state of Virginia in the birthplace of the Black American experience. When I learned the statistic that 1 in 4 Black Americans can trace their roots back to Richmond, that was a powerful thing that I continue to tell people on and on. And so when we think about bringing Black filmmakers to this space, it's very important for us to contextualize the space that they're in, that they're screening their film. And that's an important thing for us to drive home with filmmakers and with guests who come to Richmond to enjoy the festival and the experiences that we're creating. And so an example of how we do that is something that has been a continuous event since the start of the festival is our Sunday trolley ride that we provide for filmmakers. And so the festival is open for public programming Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But on that Sunday, we reserve time to take our filmmakers on a trolley ride of Black Richmond, give them an opportunity to see places like Jackson Ward, understand that history, and understand the importance of a place like Richmond in the history of the Black American experience, as I've said. And so we also partner with community partners like Untold RVA, when we often have hosted an ancestor remembrance ceremony as a part of that as well. And so we're not only crafting experiences for our guests who come to see films, but also for the filmmakers who are also our guests while they're here with us in Richmond. When we think about our venues as well within the city of Richmond, we're very intentional about selecting venues that match the vibe and the aesthetic of whatever the experience is that we're curating. So one of the most frequently asked questions that I get for people who are unfamiliar with Afrikana is, so where's the festival happening? And I always kind of chuckle when I hear that, because there's not just one place. When I think about the 3 years that I've been with Afrikana, every year that we curate the festival, every year that we curate different events throughout the year, we're thinking about how we can highlight the best of Richmond. So whether we're in the courtyard of the Valentine Museum or the courtyard of the Branch Museum, whether we are at the VMFA, which is a historic arts institution, or at the ICA, which is a more contemporary arts institution, whether we're at Maymont Park, highlighting some of our beautiful outdoor spaces in Richmond, or whether we go to an indoor traditional theater space like the Bird Theater or the Gray Street Theater, whether we go to historic museums like the Black History Museum, we're always thoughtful about how whatever experience that we're creating, how that connects to the place where we're creating that experience for everyone. We also try to stay on the cutting edge of things. As I've said, there's a traditional way that you can screen a film in a theater layout with the seats, with the screen. But thinking about how we can project on the side of buildings, thinking about how we can do outdoor screenings and different ways and have experiences in ways that people are not traditionally used to seeing films. And so that creates a layered and textured experience for everyone who comes. And it also allows us to show off the place while still giving some spotlight to whatever the film is. Next, it's about using impactful experiential elements. And so when we think about we're very thoughtful about all of the elements that guests are going to interact with and how that's going to create a really engaging experience. So what are they going to see? What is the art on the walls of this museum? What is the exhibition that happens to be on display while we're doing a screening at a particular museum, and making sure that that's in correlation with whatever we're doing? Or whether it's the beauty of the outdoors. When we do events at Maymont and other outdoor spaces, we think about what people are going to see around them and experience around them while they're also taking in that film. What are people going to hear? When we think about music, is it going to be a live band? Is it going to be a jazz trio? Is it going to be a go-go band? Is it going to be a DJ that's playing hip hop? Is it going to be a DJ that's playing Afro beats? All of that is important and connects to the storytelling and the story that we're telling and the film that's being presented at that time. We have also enlisted a DJ named Mike Medic, who curates a playlist for us every year. And so every year we release a playlist for Afrikana that usually ties into whatever thematic we're really trying to drive home from that year's festival. And that's really important. As far as the other senses, smell and taste, you would be hard pressed to go to an Afrikana event where we're not going to give you something to nibble on and a little something to sip on. And so we're very conscious of that, not only from a hospitality point of view, but how do those things connect to, once again, the story that we're telling and the film that we're presenting to our audiences. We also recognize that food is a storytelling device, just like film, and that we can also, as I said, continue to drive home that story through whatever food we cater or get provided. Last year, we did a 25th anniversary screening of Eve's Bayou at the Branch Museum as a part of our multi-day film festival. And during that time, we thought about Eve's Bayou as a film set in Louisiana. And so we thought about, okay, we're not gonna bring a taco truck out. Not that there's anything wrong with tacos, but does it connect to Eve's Bayou and the setting and location and the vibe of the film? And so we actually brought out a food truck called Fantabulous Chef that provided shrimp and grits and gumbo and perhaps some of the best bread pudding I've ever had in my life. And so thinking about how, as people are enjoying the film, the food that they're eating and tasting also kind of mirrors what they're seeing on the screen and creates a deeper experience. And like I said, it's textured. We also think about the feel. So, it's wonderful to be in an air-conditioned, controlled environment of a theater, but we love to do outdoor screenings where people can enjoy a beautiful summer evening in Richmond, if it's not too hot and not too humid, but create a moment where people can also experience films outside of a traditional environment. And how do those experiential elements add into that experience for them? And I think what really, really, really makes Afrikana special is our hospitality. I would say that our Afrikana team is really experts at making people feel comfortable and making people feel at home and making them feel seen from the moment they show up to any Afrikana event. You're going to be greeted with a smile. You're going to be greeted with a hello, how are you, on a deep, genuine, organic level. As I've said, curating experiences is about connection, organic connection with individuals. And so you have to connect with people on a person-to-person level. They're not just another ticket holder. They're not just another number on our Eventbrite registration list. These are people who are coming and we're creating an experience for them. And so we have to treat them with a level of care and true Southern hospitality. And there are certain things that drive that home. Anjali has a long career in hospitality. And so there are things that we think about when we're training our ambassadors and volunteers to come in. And it's something as simple as making sure people have a napkin when you give them a cup of something to drink or a plate of something to eat. Checking on people as we're walking around events. Are you doing okay? Do you need something? Can we get anything for you? And another thing that we drive home with our volunteers and just our ambassador core is this idea that I don't know is not a sufficient answer to a question that a festival goer or an event goer may ask. It's always, well, let me find that out for you, or let me see if I can get an answer, or just being prepared to answer whatever questions people may ask so that they feel like they're being supported through whatever experience you're creating for them. And it's about remembering and relating to our previous guests. we have people who are our core of events. And when you start to curate events that resonate with people, they continue to come back. And so it's remembering those people when you see them at the door, greeting them with a genuine hello, remembering a conversation that you had with them perhaps over a year ago. And with that, people will continue to engage and connect because of that person-to-person connection that you make with them and the hospitality that you provide within that space and within that experience. And then lastly, it's about creating space for entertainment, engagement, and empathy. And so we're a film festival. People find films entertaining. And so there is a level of it that is just about providing high quality films for people to enjoy, for people to laugh at, for people to tell other people about these films. It's about great music, great food, all of these things that are going to create an entertaining experience for people, just kind of at a base level. If anyone has attended an Afrikana after party, they will often tell you about it, and it is a time. It's an exciting time. It's one of our most popular events, because at the end of the day, while we're creating spaces for these critical thought and conversation and things like that, we also recognize that Black joy is revolutionary, and we want to create a space for people to just let their hair down, listen to some great music, dance their heart out, and just have a great time and be entertained when they leave our events. Next, it's about engagement. Like I've said before, Afrikana, it's about connection, and we never screen films in a vacuum. And so it's about how we can foster connection and create space for discussion. That is one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we get from our filmmakers, is that they love the often intimate spaces that we create for those post-screening Q&As, and how the audiences who view their films feel comfortable asking them questions, relating to them, talking to them after even the Q&A has finished, to continue to talk to them not only about their film, but just about their life experience and what inspired them to create whatever piece of art they've premiered at Afrikana. And so we do that too with, as I've said, critical thoughts and debates. It's not always about seeing eye to eye with everyone. And that's the beautiful thing about seeing a film surrounded by other people, is very different from watching it alone by yourself in your home, or even with friends and family. Because when we often open these spaces up for Q&A, you get to relate to other people, and you hear someone say something and be like, oh, I had that same reaction at that part of the film. And you get to connect with them on that level, or you get to say, actually, I saw this a different way, and the film resonated with me in this way for this reason. And so through that, it leads me to my next point. It's an opportunity to create empathy within those experiences and within those events. And so I think what drew me to wanting to be a filmmaker in the first place is this idea that film is a really powerful medium that can help us to walk away with a better understanding, not only of ourselves, but of our neighbors and the people that we're engaging in this film with. And so when you laugh together with a crowd full of people, or when you get a little misty and dab your eye at a certain part of a film, that is a way of connecting and creating empathy with perhaps people that were strangers. And it creates that connection. It creates that community that I've talked about is all a part of curating experiences. But it also helps you to realize, even though Afrikana is a Black film festival and we have largely our audience is Black people, a lot of times within these films and then within these discussions, it helps people to see that there's diversity within the Black experience and that we don't exist as a monolith. There are different experiences related to sexuality and gender and religion, and all of those things often come up in those post-screening Q&A discussions, and it helps people to relate to one another, even if they thought that they were one and the same, just because of the color of their skin when they walked into that space. And it helps us to realize that these stories, because Afrikana screens stories and curates experiences about the Black experience across the diaspora, we may be different geographically, we may be different culturally, but there are still points of connectivity that create a through line oftentimes within us as a people. And you see that through line in the connection to the film and the audience and the people as well. And we hope to see that we're more similar than we are different. And within that, as I've said, it creates what we like to call our Afrikana tribe, our community of people. And when you successfully curate experiences, those are the sorts of connections, relationships, kinship, intimacy that automatically develops within a very carefully and well thought out curated event. And so with that, I will say thank you for allowing me an opportunity to provide some insight into really the heart and the art of curating cultural events and experiences. So I would also like to personally invite you to the 8th Annual Afrikana Independent Film Festival, which will take place September the 14th through the 17th. We will start promo for that. You will see it on our website as well as our Instagram page very soon. So thank you all very much. I don't know if there are any questions that are in the chat, but I would love to open this up and have a further discussion.
Nigel, you have one question in the chat now.
Okay. Okay. How do you manage the pacing of an event with so many elements? What are your best practices for balancing downtime, discussion, and activities? So that's really important. We think about within any event, if we're doing a one-off event, for example, if we're screening a feature film, we always factor in and create a buffer of time for discussion. And we often try to really expand that. We try not to lowball it and realize, okay, we can't screen a 90-minute film and provide 15 minutes of audience Q&A and discussion. And so with that, we think about like, what is a adequate amount of time for people to really discuss, and realize that we may even go over in that. And so with that, the pacing of the film, but also the Q&A discussion is really important. There are a lot of elements, but we think about how we can often invite people in with a reception, get people a few drinks and something to eat, then invite them to sit down, engage in a film, and have discussion. So there's really a flow that we also think about when we have these elements in mind. But we think about it from the moment people walk in. And often when we're doing any sort of walkthrough at any sort of space, we often literally walk through it as if we are an attendee, as if we are a guest. What is this going to look like when they walk up to the table? What is registration going to look like? When they walk through the doors, is someone going to be there to direct them to the different spaces? Who's going to be there at the bar to let them know, what the drink offerings are, what's going to be presented there. Also, what is the food going to look like? Who's going to be there to help assist them in that space? And so when we realize we have a lot of moving pieces and a lot of elements, we try to take it very slow and think through each little step as if we were a person there, and not just thinking about it from behind the scenes, because sometimes you can miss that piece if you don't try to put yourself in the shoes of the people, of your guests. And then if I can answer the second part, what are your best practices for balancing downtime, discussion, and activities? It's really about creating time and realizing that we don't want to rush these experiences. A lot of our discussions sometimes run a little bit over because people get into the heat of a discussion, and we don't want to cut it short just because we said, we said we're going to be done by 8:30. It's 8:31. Time to turn the mics off. Sometimes we have to create space for that. And it's about fluidity in order to really create a space that has the right vibrations within that space. So I hope that answers your question, Cass. And if not, feel free to follow up. I'd love to expound upon that more. How can people sign up to be volunteers during the festival? So we are Today, we will be releasing our call for ambassadors. That's what we call our volunteers, our Afrikana ambassadors, because they're not just people who come to serve for a couple of days or for a couple of hours at our events. These are often people that help to spread the word about who we are as Afrikana, what we do, and they're ambassadors of our vibe and our energy. And so that's really important that we have ambassador trainings. We often do 2 trainings for ambassadors before they even reach an event or reach a festival, so that we as a team can get to know the ambassadors and get a feel for, okay, this is a great person that can work the bar or serve food, or perhaps this is a great person who will be a great greeter, or this is a person who's a doer. And so they're going to make sure that these tables and chairs are set up, or these tables or chairs are broken down. And so we think about that very seriously when we're doing volunteer assignments. And so volunteer call will be going out soon. There will be a form for people to sign up. Again, as I said, the festival is September the 14th through the 17th, and there will be an opportunity for people to volunteer and engage for as much as you would like during that time. And so more info coming on that soon. And thank you, Katrina E, for your kudos there. That's my mom. I appreciate her being a mom and being in the comments and giving me giving me some kudos and props. So yes, indeed. Are there any other? Okay, question here from Amber. Do you have any new faces, vendors, musicians, or other event partners that you would recommend? So part of being a great curator is attending events and kind of, for lack of a better word, being in the streets. You kind of have to be out there. You can't really curate within a vacuum and just assume or work within your same network of people that you've had, over the past few years, just because they've been regular DJs or they've been regular vendors or things like that. It's about going to other events and supporting community partners and discovering a new food truck or a new restaurant or a new DJ, because you've been to an event, you can get their card, you can connect with them and realize and think about how they can plug in to different experiences. So I can share my email address if that's okay with you, Amber. And if you'd like to talk more about specific vendors or musicians or event partners that we've had at Afrikana that you may be interested in for an event that you have, I'd be happy to share that as well. Oh, you plan events at Maymont. Okay, yep. So I would love to share some of that with you. A big part of what we do, I talk about the importance of place with Richmond in terms of the experiences that we curate, but I didn't talk as much about how we really try to highlight Richmond stories, Richmond filmmakers, Richmond artists within all of the programming that we have as well. So we often bring in spotlight guests from around the world, but we also have to make sure that we give Richmond some space, because this is the place that we're creating this in. And so we want to make sure that we create that space, as I said. What's been the biggest lesson learned in planning these events? That's a great question. I think it has, as I kind of talked about in the beginning of the presentation, helped me to realize that there was a difference between planning events and curating experiences for people. I think I have, just within my life and other experience in high school and college, I've planned events for people. I've planned school dances. I've planned, other events, but there's a difference between curating an experience for people and planning an event in my mind. And I think that has stuck with me, not only in my professional work, working with Afrikana, but I actually just planned my 10-year high school class reunion a few weeks ago. And when I thought about what each day of that reunion was going to look like, it's almost like I went into that Afrikana curator mode where I'm thinking about, okay, what are the different elements we can pull in? And I'm sure my committee was looking at me like, this is just a class reunion. But I really wanted to make sure that there was a level of connection, there was a level of us really being thoughtful and intentional about every decision that we made during that time. And so I think that I realize now to have a successful event or to create a successful or impactful experience, there has to be a level of thoughtfulness and intention. And as I said, event planning is operating a lot of times from a headspace. And a lot of those things that I mentioned for event planning are still important. You still got to have a budget. You still got to manage the logistics and all of those things. But in my mind, those things should come secondary to thinking about what the experience is for people. And then you start to craft in your logistics coming in after that. Because if you start with the logistics, then there's a level of rigidity that may not allow for the flow, for the ebb and flow of just, does this feel right? If anyone could be a fly on the wall for some of Anjali and I's discussions, an event may look very different on Monday than it does on Wednesday. And so within a 2-day time period, we can talk about an event and how we want it to flow. And a few days later, it's like, well, actually, maybe that doesn't feel right. Maybe we want to create this, or maybe we want to pull this person in, or maybe we want to talk about this in a different way. And so allowing for that flow, even though we may have put it down on paper and we may have, thought about one specific avenue, creating a level of flexibility, because sometimes your spirit will just tell you, actually, this is a better way for us to flow with this event because it may connect better with people if we go in this direction. So if that answers your question, Kes, that it's made me someone who can sometimes be about things, kind of loosen up a little bit and allow for that flow and flexibility. And that's been a really big lesson in experience curation and event planning. Let's see what other questions are in here. Another question from Kes. And you all can feel free if you want to come off of mute to say your question out loud. If you don't want to put it in the chat, I'm happy to have like a conversation versus just reading the questions. But if Afrikana was hosting their first ever event in 2023, what steps would your organization take to ensure success? Now knowing what you know with the 8 years of experience. Wow. I think that, we learn and grow with every year that we have. But a lot of times that learning and growth doesn't change what we still know at the foundation, which is some of those things related to like storytelling and creating those impactful experiential elements. A lot of those 4 things that I shared for today are like baseline things that, as I understand it, have been a consideration for Anjali and the Afrikana team from the beginning of Afrikana as an organization and as a multi-day film festival. And so I think, if anything, we now realize the possibilities because of the growth. We have done, for instance, Movies and Mimosas was a brunch and film screening series that they did for at least 2 events I know. Well, within our festival, we the past 2 years have done a midnight Movies and Mimosas, because we're thinking about, okay, how can we, change this concept and kind of differentiate this idea of an event that we've already done. There are so many possibilities for programming. When we realized and really leaned into food as a storytelling device, that was what helped with the development of our Taste of Liberation dinner. Realizing that we could bring in a chef to help drive home an experience and help create a deeper and more textured experience for people outside of just having them sit and watch a film. And so I think, if anything, using our past 8 years of experience, and we were creating our first ever event, it would be to like maximize the potential of all that we've learned over these years and kind of fold it into a new experience. Okay. I'm seeing a message from Dr. DiCarlo. I'm going to go ahead now for everyone and just put my email in the chat if that's okay. So if anyone would like to reach out with any other questions or has any questions about vendors or other things like that, or vending with Afrikana, that we can talk about that. I did see that Katrina E had her hand up.
Yes, hi, Nigel. I have a question about budget and funding, and I think sometimes it's easy to have a nice experience and you can have those things when you have a smaller budget because it can be more intimate. So where do you see Afrikana in the future as funding gets bigger? Or let's say if you had an unlimited budget, how would you be able, do you think you'd be able to keep those intimate and experience elements with large funding?
Mm-hmm. So a big consideration for Anjali every year is trying to get as much funding as possible so that the access to our events our events are accessible to people, and ensuring that cost is not a factor that is going to make it so that someone is unable to attend a specific event. And so when we think about expanding our funding or having unlimited budgets, I often think that we would be able to layer that even more and provide more access to people who want to experience these things. But, we do really large scale events that we've had, over 500 attendees in Maymont for outdoor screening. But when we think about like our opening night reception events and spaces like that, we often try to cap those experiences at 50 to 75 people so that you can still create those small, intimate experiences. And so I think even if we had an unlimited budget, and as we continue to get more funders and more donors who see the value of Afrikana in our programming, realizing that Afrikana started with those small, intimate events for people, and that is foundational for us, and we will continue to do that even when our budget allows for us to do even more grand and exciting events. And so I think budget will allow us to think more creatively and be more cutting edge and more, like I said, creative about the way that we present certain things. But I don't think that will change how we present things or the scale of any of our events. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much. Great answer.
Thank you. And Cass?
Yeah, hi, Nigel. Sorry, I have so many questions, but I appreciate this presentation a lot. I'm actually in the process of planning my own cultural event in the area that I'm in. And I was just curious where you personally stand, or even like other people that you work with stand on like mentorship for like small business owners who are trying to do something similar to what you're doing as far as like providing a cultural experience that's not just like an event.
Yeah, I think that's a great note. And until I started working for Afrikana, I didn't even realize that I don't even know that I had a full understanding of what curation was or what a film curator did to even understand what Anjali does. And so I think that there are, as you said, maybe exist some spaces for people to learn about event planning, because like I said, that's a little bit methodical and you can teach people, how to make budgets and how to promote and, how to do reservations and the scheduling and the vendors. But really thinking about guiding people through that curation, that experience curation piece. I think that's a really exciting note. And I'd love for you to follow up on that and see how we can talk more about that, talk more about your event, and even maybe put a bug in Anjali's ear about what it means to do a masterclass on experience curation type situation, because I think that it would help to revolutionize and change the way people look at planning any event when you think about it from a different viewpoint and perspective. So I'd love to follow up with you on that, Cass, because that's a great idea.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely send you an email after this and see, where the conversation can go. Thank you.
Okay. Excellent, thank you. And then Dr. DeCarlo?
Yes, thank you. I am so enthused about what you're doing, and I'll contact you about, being involved, but my question now is, I looked you up on the internet, and I was trying to see how the young people at my church can benefit from your experience, from
Mm-hmm.
your project.
Mm-hmm.
We are planning trips now. And one, we're going to Shirley Plantation in Prince George, Virginia. And
Okay.
we're planning these for the fall, when it's not too hot and not too cold. But in addition to bringing them maybe to the festival up there, I was thinking about an interactive engagement where I don't know if you do this, but you have people to come and be involved, or I don't know if they would have to come to Richmond and have special interaction in which they kind of engage with you. I guess it would be mentorship, but do you do things like that with kids specifically?
Yes, and so I'll answer your question in two ways. So during our
Okay.
multi-day film festival every year, on the Saturday is typically when we take over the arts district and we do film screenings in art galleries all up and down Broad Street in Richmond, Virginia. One of those spaces is a space called Art 180, which is specifically dedicated to art education for youth. And in that space, we do an event called the Afrikana Youth Takeover, where we screen films that are geared towards a youth audience. We often bring in the filmmakers to have discussion with the youth there, but sometimes they even offer their time to do workshops. Last year, we had a workshop on, how to shoot a short film on your phone, because when you empower youth or help them to realize that sometimes they have the tools already to create their stories sitting right in their pockets, it just helps to make it a little bit more real for them. And so we have those opportunities during our festival, but then Afrikana Institute, our 501c3, also supports youth education year round, in that we have opportunities for people or for youth groups to contact us, and we can do mini festivals, remote festivals at certain locations, so we can go to people. We've also had the opportunity to bring youth groups to Richmond and do what we call a film trip instead of a field trip, a film trip, an Afrikana film trip, and invite people here for the same purpose of screening a film, talking to the filmmakers, perhaps doing a little workshop. And so it's the sort of thing where we can talk to people about their needs and desires for their youth group and for their group. And from there, we can kind of curate an experience that works best for whatever your desired outcomes are for them, so that they really have an engaging and exciting experience for whatever that may be. So if you'd like to reach out to me, I did put my email in the chat. If you're interested in that, we can definitely talk more about what that looks like.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes.
Sounds exciting. And we're trying to do a whole lot more with our youth instead of just preaching to them, but engage them in things that will promote them spiritually, but also engage them in their interests.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful idea. Thank you. Yes, and thank you, Daniel, for that note. We did, as a part of our multi-day film festival, actually bring some youth from Hopewell. And they worked with our youth and internship coordinator, Katina Moss, who helped coordinate a whole opportunity for them to get a bus and come down
Oh,
here
wow.
and make it like a chaperone trip for them to be here for the festival and be able to engage for the full day. So like I said, we've had some opportunities in the past for youth. And so it's definitely folded into our programming model and the things that we do.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay.
So I know we're creeping up on 10. Are any other questions from anyone? I do thank you all again for being engaging, having great questions, and for allowing me to be here and speak about something that I am continuously learning about, but something that I'm extremely passionate about at this stage in my career and in my life. And so I'm very thankful for this opportunity to be with you all again today.
Thank you, Nigel, for being our presenter this month. This was a really great conversation. Thank you all for joining our coffee hour. Our September coffee hour registration will go live on September 1st. And we hope to see you again next month. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, have a great day.